In a world that just can't seem to stop talking, what happens to the quiet ones? Today, we are diving into Susan Cain's Quiet, an absolute game changer of a book that spent 8 years on the New York Times bestseller list, pretty much by flipping our whole idea of success on its head. So let's start with this question, because it really gets to the heart of everything. We're constantly told to admire the most charismatic person, the loudest voice in the room. But here's the thing. That leaves out a huge chunk of people. Somewhere between a third and a half of us are introverts. So in our big rush to celebrate the talkers, what have we actually lost? To really get how we ended up here, we need to jump in a time machine and go back to a massive cultural shift that happened in the 20th century. This was a moment that totally changed who we, as a society, think we should be. Okay, so a cultural historian named Warren Sussman, he noticed this incredible change. We went from what he called a culture of character, where things like integrity and honor were everything, to a culture of personality. All of a sudden, what mattered most was being charming, being that mighty, likable fellow, and this is what gave birth to what Susan Cain calls the extrovert ideal, this belief that the perfect person is outgoing, a natural leader, and just totally comfortable in the spotlight. But hold on, what even is an introvert? I think we all have a picture in our head, but a huge misconception is that it's just another word for being shy. And as we're about to see, the book draws a line in the sand here that honestly changes everything. So it's not about being antisocial or not liking people. It really all boils down to your internal battery. Think of it like this. For an introvert, a big party or a noisy meeting drains that battery. They need to be alone to plug back in and recharge. Extroverts? They're the complete opposite. For them, being around people is the charger. And here is the absolute key takeaway. Introversion is about how you manage your energy. Shyness is about the fear of what other people think of you. You can absolutely be a super confident introvert who loves giving speeches, but then needs to go home and be alone for 3 hours to recover. And you can also be a shy extrovert who desperately wants to be with people but is just too afraid of rejection. They're just not the same thing at all. And what's really fascinating is that these differences aren't just, little personality quirks. It actually turns out they're wired deep into the biology of our brains. For real, studies show that introverts' brains have naturally higher levels of internal stimulation. It's like there's already a constant hum of activity going on inside. And that's why they tend to shy away from loud, chaotic environments. Their internal volume is already turned up. Extroverts, on the other hand, have a lower baseline of that activity, so they go looking for that external buzz to feel alive. This whole thing even comes down to our brain chemistry. Extroverts tend to be driven by dopamine. That's the reward chemical. They're actually less sensitive to it, which is why they chase risks and new experiences to get that good feeling. Introverts are the opposite. They're super sensitive to dopamine and can get overwhelmed by it easily. They run on a different pathway, acetylcholine, which feels rewarding during calm, focused things like reading a book or just thinking deeply. Okay, so if introverts are literally wired differently, what are their unique strengths? Especially when you look at something like leadership, where we've all been taught to expect an extrovert to be in charge. Well, first, let's just get one thing straight. We are not talking about a small group of people here. This is up to half of the entire population. That means in any given company, any classroom, any team, half the potential for amazing, groundbreaking ideas might be coming from the people who aren't even talking. So the book points out that introverts have this incredible set of skills that our fast-paced world often just steamrolls over. Because their brains are built to inspect things carefully instead of just reacting, they're amazing at deep work, at the kind of creativity that only happens when you're alone, and at making really careful, thoughtful decisions. And hey, because they usually listen more than they talk, they can be unbelievably empathetic. Just think about Rosa Parks. We often hear her described as defiant, but the people who actually knew her said she was quiet, gentle, and thoughtful. Her power didn't come from being loud. It came from a calm, unshakable strength and a powerful conscience. She wasn't trying to grab the spotlight, but her quiet action literally changed the world. And the same exact thing is true for innovation. The co-founder of Apple, Steve Wozniak, has said over and over that the best creative work happens when you're alone, in that quiet space where you can actually think without being interrupted. It's a pretty powerful message in a world that is obsessed with open plan offices and constant group brainstorming. So, as more and more people recognize these incredible strengths, it's kicked off what Susan Cain calls a quiet revolution. Basically, a movement to redesign our schools, our workplaces, and our lives to work for everyone, not just the loudest people. And this isn't just some nice idea. It is actually happening right now. You've got companies finally realizing that open offices can kill productivity, so they're creating quiet spaces for deep thinking. You have schools where teachers are learning to value the quiet, thoughtful student, not just the one whose hand shoots up first. And in the business world, we're finally seeing that the best leaders aren't always the best talkers. A lot of the time, they're the best listeners. This all leads to a really powerful tool for all of us, introvert or extrovert. The idea of finding your restorative niche. It's exactly what it sounds like. It's the place you go to get back to being your true self. For an introvert, that might be a quiet walk after a crazy day of meetings. For an extrovert, it could be grabbing that coffee with coworkers. Whatever it is for you, it's that space that lets you recharge your batteries and just be yourself. At the end of the day, the message of quiet isn't about introverts being better than extroverts or vice versa. It's all about balance. The world desperately needs both. We need the bold action of the talkers and the deep reflection of the thinkers. So the question it leaves us with is this: how are you going to honor your own nature and the nature of the people around you to bring your unique power to the world?